No, I think the mandate to reposition this particular department would have been the same one I had in defense. Very different in the sense that defense is a security environment with a different ethos and level of professionalism and different rigor. This one is a much broader mandate and much broader ministry with probably the biggest number of employees possible. And it is in a very difficult situation right now, and therefore it will be a very difficult one for me.
And
it's a
people,
huge challenge.
and some analysts already have said that it's actually a poison chalice you got here.
Yes, I've been hearing a lot of these phrases, poison chalice, and all of that. I don't know what it means. I have reiterated that if I was called upon to do this job because it is such a tough one, then I am very honored. I'll do my best. That's the only thing I can do. And I am certain that I will be able to get somewhere with this. And we have a serious challenge of transforming the state. And I hope that I'll be the one who can do that.
And part of the reason, though, why they say it's a poison chalice is simply because you've had 3 ministers in 3 years already in this portfolio. Just over the past year alone, you've had 2 directors general and 1 acting director general. It's very difficult.
It's very difficult, yes. That's probably why we needed to do something about ensuring that we can stabilize it, making sure that it is not the weak and fractured institution that it has become. But I am certain that we will get on top of this.
And that's why then analysts initially were questioning why you would have been moved from defense to this. Others actually going as far as saying that it was a demotion on your part.
No, if I was the president and I had a problem, I would call a general, wouldn't you?
Certainly. So you think that a troubleshooter.
And I don't know if a troubleshooter would be the term. But I think that we will see. I think I'm up to the job, and I think I will make sure that South Africa can count on the public service to be what we want them to be.
And part of the reason why people talk about these difficulties is because they say the public service in this country is highly politicized.
Well, yes, because we have a highly politicized society. And part of what we are hoping to do is make sure that we can professionalize it and remove the politics out of it. And if we have a professional public service, then they would know the line between politics and the public service.
The question is, where do you begin, though? Because part of the reason why it is this politicized is an outcome of a political process itself.
It had to be. I mean, this is part of the transformatory, curve that any country coming from a situation like ours would have had to go through. I don't think we've done badly at all. I think that we have delivered quite a lot, but we fall on some areas, and this one might be one of them for whatever reason, probably because of its size, probably because of the challenges that come up from time to time. But we are hoping that in the second phase, the second bite that we have, which we call the second transition, we will be able to deal with this particular issue very specifically and make sure that we can, moving into the 21st year, which is after 2014 of our liberation, we'd be able to boast of a very professional, very efficient public service, a public service that is reasonable, a public service that is respected, a public service that knows that the state cares, a public service that is proud of the job that they do. I could go on and on. And I think that quite a lot of them do a very decent job and do not get recognized for that. And today I just need to add it is Africa Public Service Day. So to all our public servants out there, I'd like to wish them a happy day today. I want them to know that the government does care for them. I want to thank them for all the services that they have provided. And I'd like to urge them that together we can get better results out of what we're doing and be even prouder of what we're doing.
Part of depoliticizing the public service, though, will have to mean that you deal directly with the unions, because unions, by their very nature, and they say this, they are political animals and they bring politics into the public service. How are you going to do that?
Well, I've already had a think around this matter, and I've expressed myself on this. One of the first things I'd like to do with the unions is to reach some kind of accord with them that will ultimately lead to some kind of service charter with them. Both of us have a role to play in the state. Both of us have a role to play in the public service. And I think that it is important that we kind of work out what roles we play and how we respect each other's space. and how we make sure that even as they perform their job, they can assist me to deliver. The most important thing that we are, both of us, employed to do, the workers and myself, is to make sure that it's people first. What we are employed to do is serve our people, deliver our services to our people. That is our mandate. That's what the Constitution wants us to do. And I think that the unions, these unions, I must say, are legitimate. These unions' rights are enshrined in the Constitution. These unions' rights are there to ensure that they can protect their members and fight for a better work condition for their workers. It's a legitimate responsibility, and I would like us to make sure that we can find some way in which we can create space that out of that we do not have any disruptions.
Sure.
I'm very eager that in my tenure there should not be any strikes. And that between us we can, give out the kind of message that is important to our people.
Sure. I'll ask you if the strike is avoidable given the deadlock at the moment. But before that, there's been reaction already from some unions. Nehao, for instance, was quoted a couple of days ago as saying that they would like to work with you, but are troubled by what they refer to as your history of intolerance in dealing with workers, as your relationship with defense unions showed.
I think that Nehao is probably responding to what the media has been bandying about, because in a time when probably there is very little to do, when you come across a story like this, you will bring out whatever it is that makes it sensational. I'm on record, and I will repeat this. The African National Congress came into government completely convinced, like the rest of the world, that there is no place for unions in the Defence Force. I've said that over and over again. The President, as Commander-in-Chief, said that to COSATU itself, that there is no place for unions in the Defence Force. None of our policies accommodate this. However, I think there was a glitch at some point in the development of this understanding, and the Constitutional Court did pronounce itself on the right of soldiers to have associations, not to have unions. I believe that this was misinterpreted by the department, and they legalized unions. And I don't know if that is their place. But the main issue around my tenure in defense and the unions is their disruptive nature. It is their ill discipline. If I'd come in there and I'd found a disciplined group of people, I would have sat down with them and I'd said to them, look, I think we need to work this out. There is no place here for unions. Perhaps you might occupy a different place if you want to look after your workers, but it is after your people. But there is no place in the Defence Force. There is no argument about this. Cabinet has pronounced itself. The ANC has pronounced itself. It's just a matter of waiting for the legal processes to take their course. And this has now been used to, add some kind of, sauciness to the story. But my relations with unions have right now have been very good. I think I've asked them to consider their position of walking away from the negotiations, and already I think I'm getting very good response, and I'm very encouraged by that.
So you think that it's possible to avoid a strike?
I am hoping it is possible to avoid a strike. I would like to think that neither the unions nor myself as the employer have the appetite for a strike. It's a very costly exercise, both for the state and for the people affected by it in the long term.
Sure. It's
very costly for the country. It's not necessary in this economic environment.
But again, people are saying unions, and I understand you say you hope they don't have the appetite for a strike, are emboldened by what happened in 2007 and 2010. They wanted a double-digit increase, and they got it after going to the streets.
Well, yes, they did get it after going to the streets, and that is why I am hoping that right now, having had those increases, which were huge increases, they can understand that we do not have the resources, that the global economy is not what it was, and that we cannot go on like this with the wage bill that we have, that there are other ways in which we can improve the conditions of workers without increasing the wage bill, that there are other ways in which we can look after what are the concerns of the unions without it impacting on the economy. And that's why I want a service accord, an accord with them, and a service charter with them.
Sure.
So we draw the parameters, we work together. We come from a common history, the unions and ourselves. We've had accords before, and we've worked together. it is in our best interest, themselves and myself, to make sure that this country does work.
Interesting also about the charter, because it seems to suggest that government is not getting its money's worth from the workers. That is why you want the increase linked to productivity and service.
I do want the increase linked to productivity and service. You know, one of the first things that happened to me, I walk into my job, it's the day after one of the unions, the independent labour, has walked out of negotiations, and I discover when I am taken through this that essentially what we're discussing is the increase. And I ask myself, but if this is what we're discussing, what about me as the employer? What is it that I'm asking of the unions? What is it I'm asking of the civil service as they negotiate their increase? And I found that there's a missing element here. There's got to be value for money. Any increase has to be underpinned by productivity, against which you can measure that it is a justifiable increase. But I found this missing in our discussions. And I thought maybe we could start from scratch, find each other, understand where we come from, and make sure that it does work. It doesn't need to be hostile.
It sounds really good, but the issue is, and Nehao in particular has already said that they may consider the multi-year salary agreement provided you give them double digit.
I don't have double digit. I don't have double digit. I wish I had. But, we're dealing with the realities of the economy that we're in right now. We're dealing with the realities of the global meltdown right now. The reason why I am asking them to consider a multi-year, agreement is because it helps us as a state to plan ahead. It helps us as a state understand how much we're using on the wage bill. It helps us understand how much we're using on other areas. This budget, for instance, that was presented by the Minister of Finance, presupposes that a chunk of the budget will be directed towards infrastructure development, which is absolutely essential for our development and our economic development. And I don't think that we'd anticipated that we'd be faced with a situation like this. So if we deal with an increasing wage bill, which has been going on for some time, we do it at the sacrifice of other services that the government is required to provide. We do it at the expense of this infrastructure program that is underway. We do it at the expense of increasing more jobs. We do it at the expense of service delivery. We do it at the expense of so many other things that are a priority for the state. And I'm certain that our civil service understand this, and I just need a forum to deal directly with them and speak directly with them, so that we can plan ahead